Welcome, everyone, to the CEO Next Door. Our focus is on founder stories. Man, it has been so long since we've last done a recording. I feel a bit rusty, but I think we'll muddle through it. Today on the pod, as always, we have Donovan Morrison, my co-host, and a very special guest, Ron Douglas. Ron, welcome to the pod. How are you?
How's it going, guys?
We are well. We're, as I said, we're a little rusty, so bear with us if we stumble a bit through this pod. But why don't we start off with learning a bit more about you?
Okay.
Give us just your elevator pitch on who you are and what you've been up to.
Well, yeah, my name is Ron Douglas. I started a company called Mentoring Giants, and I honestly the main focus of Mentoring Giants is getting people to their first $1 million, the fastest path to $1 million. So I focus on that. I will teach that in the next 30 minutes and how we do that, and there's no fluff involved. I'm anti-fluff, so it's straight to the meat, and we are all about getting people to that first $1 million.
Interesting. What inspired you to start this business? First question. Second question, what type of individuals do you work with? Like mainly entrepreneurs, I presume?
Yes. Yeah. Mostly entrepreneurs, startups, things like that. The small businesses, people with service-based businesses, dry cleaners, mechanics, things like that as well. Landscapers, kind of a few of those. The main thing is the reason I started this was obviously, after I did that show on Discovery Channel, the Blue Collar Backers, and then once I did that, I was just bombarded with people wanting help. And
Right.
at the time, I was trying to do the show, and I had 20 companies at the time, and so I had no interest in trying to do coaching at the time. And so I kind of just let all of that go, and I just ignored a lot of the people reaching out. I was burning the candle at both ends. And it was about probably about 2 months ago, I guess now, probably 2-3 months ago, somebody recognized me in a store and approached me from the show. And yeah, it's been a while since I did the show, but people still do. And anyway, they were asking me some business questions, and I tell you what, man, that just lit a fire in me again, like you wouldn't believe. I moved down here, and I kind of just been out of the picture for a long time. But man, my wife was tugging on my shirt like an hour and a half later. She's like, "We gotta go," and I was just like, "This poor guy, man, he was getting it all, man. He was getting 25 years worth of knowledge in about an hour and a half, just wham." And I mean, he was grateful, but at the same time, man, I was just railing it to him. But after I left, I was just on such a high, of helping. And I was just, man, I just told my wife, I was like, I really enjoyed that. I said that we need to do that again. I need to get back into speaking, need to get back into coaching and helping and doing all that. So Mentoring Giants was born.
Are you
Awesome.
currently concurrently running other companies while you're running Mentoring Giants?
No, no more.
Okay.
I've sold everything else.
Wow.
I spent the last 2 years building up a real estate portfolio. I took on a challenge. Every year I take on a challenge, and I started with $5,000. I wanted to see how big of a real estate portfolio I could build with $5,000. The only thing that really stopped me was, well, one, I kind of got it all figured out, and I don't know, I kind of lost my drive for it. And then two, interest rates kind of went up, and it was not as exciting the numbers weren't as exciting anymore. But yeah, I started with $5,000 and built a $5 million real estate portfolio in 2 years. So
Wow.
Wow.
but other than that, I stopped that. And now I have a bunch of rentals. We got about 35 rental properties, and now I don't do anything else now. So I thought now was a perfect time to start focusing on Mentoring Giants.
Got it.
Tell us quickly how you increase that business size from 5,000 to, you say,
Oh man, it's so easy. I tell you, listen, I'm all about simple, man. I'm all about simple. So it's finding houses. I was finding houses that people were not able to live in. You know, they're unlivable, or in essence, unfinanceable, right? The banks won't finance something that isn't livable.
yeah,
So I would go to these homeowners and I would say, hey, you know, you got a home here. I'll give you an example. One of the first homes I did was $40,000. They wanted 40,000 for it. Real quick, I just went in there and I said, listen, you know, the bank will require me to have 20% down, plus I got to remodel the place. I said, I tell you what, you own or carry it. I'll give you 3,000 down, I think it was. I give you 3,000 down and you own or carry it for a short term, 6-month owner carry. And she said yes. And so I went in with that $5,000 and some credit cards. And all I did was new windows, you know, cleaned up the flooring, cleaned up the stuff, new paint, cleaned up the yard, fixed the fence, you know, stuff like that. And by the time the appraiser got there, they appraised it, and they appraised it for 150.
wow.
And you know, because I made it livable again. You know, I fixed all the, you know, made sure the gas lines were working, heaters were working, you know, got all this stuff done. And I had it rented at the time for, it was $950 or $1,000, I think, that first one. And so, you know, back then the mortgage rates were cheap. You know, I got $100,000 loan on that place for, man, it was cheap. It was like 3.25 or something like that. I think it's 3.25%.
Awesome.
And so I paid her off the 37,000 I owed her, 38,000, whatever. And then I put the money back in my pocket that I had put out, the $5,000, and then paid off the credit cards. And then I pocketed, you know, close to like 50 grand off of that deal. And then I took that money and just did it again. I just kept doing it over and over and over. And I had a whole team. By the time I got done, I had probably a 10-man team. And I had electricians, I had plumbers, and I was going in and buying these houses that were just complete wrecks and stripping them down to the studs, remodeling them, and I rented them out.
This was one of your exits, I take it. I know you've exited many a time from business.
Yeah. This one I actually haven't exited yet.
Okay.
But yeah, I still got the portfolio. I guess in theory, I've made a few exits, but I didn't count that towards my 40 exits yet, because I figure when I sell the whole portfolio, that'll be my exit. But there was a few that I bought because I didn't want to pass up on the deals because they were good deals, but they didn't make good rentals. You know, like they were 5-bedroom or something like that, you know. And so I still bought them, I remodeled them, but then I just sold them and flipped them. Or they had like 5 acres or something like that. And I didn't want like 5 acres of junk, you know, from a tenant or something like that. So, you know, I stayed to the very traditional 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes in town, decent sized yard, corner lots, whatever. You know, those I kept as rentals. Everything else I pretty much just sold. And then we've got, I don't know, probably 6 commercial properties in that portfolio as well.
Got it down to a science at this point. It sure
Yeah,
sounds like.
we had it dialed in, man. We were just, we were turning and burning. And, you know, at one time, I think we had probably 10 projects in the funnel.
Wow.
That I was waiting on the team to get, you know, I was buying them faster than they were remodeling them. And it was time to slow down because I could see the interest rates were coming, and I saw all that. So I quickly went down and I locked in all these deals with the bank. And so I got all my 35 properties. I've got them under, they're right around like 5.25, I think is the highest one I have. So everything else is locked in at 5.25 or lower. And I locked everything in for 30 years, including my commercial properties. So yeah, I'm sitting pretty sweet on those.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll dive back into mentoring giants, but let's take it back to the start. Did you grow up in Colorado, or where are you from?
No, I'm a Army brat. My dad was in the military, 22 years in the Army. Never met my first entrepreneur until I was 23 years old before I even met an entrepreneur. because we always lived on military base. Everybody was in the Army,
Right.
so I didn't know any entrepreneurs. And so, yeah, but it gave me a different perspective. I spent a lot of time in Europe, a lot of time in Germany, a lot of time Norway, Sweden, Denmark, all over there. And so it gave me a different perspective in life, that's for sure, than the average person. I went to high school in Frankfurt, Germany. Frankfurt American High School was where I went to high school. But yeah, so going back to the question though, yeah, I didn't really I didn't get along with anybody though. That was my big problem. Well, my mind thought differently than everybody else.
Hmm.
And I just kept thinking there's got to be a smarter way to do this, because the military is all about, hurry up and wait or stupid stuff. You know what I mean? It's just, they're always about inefficient. They're so inefficient how they run. And it would drive me nuts. And it was like, my dad was a drill sergeant. So, I mean, it was like, just do it because I said do it kind of attitude, and it's like, yeah, but there's an easier way to do this, I don't, and it would drive my dad nuts. I was the only one that was an oddball thinker like that out of my four brothers, and yeah, so I didn't get along with anybody. I always got in fights. I was always getting kicked out of school. I got in trouble with community sergeant majors. I mean, I was always in trouble. So I just was a hard head, and just didn't agree with the way they thought.
Sure. So it sounds like you said you met an individual in your early
Alan Brown.
20s.
Alan
Okay.
Brown. Love that man, and still visit him at least twice a year to this day. Yeah, Alan Brown, met him in South Texas. I was working at the prison system at this time. I worked 12 hours on, 12 hours off, 4 days a week.
Wow.
And
That's a lot.
yeah, so you work 4 days on, 4 days off. And then, so those 4 days off, I would go and I'd work at his wrecking yard. And he owned a wrecking yard at the time. And I thought at the time, I was broke and I was so young. I just thought, man, this guy's got everything. You know what I mean? He owned his own house, he owned his own land. And, he had 150 wrecked cars in the yard that he was parting out. And I was like, man, this guy is the king, And so I wanted to learn from him, and I said, you're the first person I've ever met that's an entrepreneur, and you're the first person that thinks like I think, and so I said, I'd love to pick your brain on this and teach me how to run my own business. And he did. He showed me how to flip cars, was the first thing we did. And that turned into, man, once I understood, again, I was not a bright person. I wasn't smart. But once I understood I could actually make money without a boss. See, my whole life I've been taught, you want money, go get a job. You want money, go get a job. And so I was like, you mean I could actually make money and not have a boss telling me stupid stuff and telling me what to do? And I didn't, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. That changed the game for me right there. And I was off to the races. I started my business. I quit the prison. I was working death row of all places.
Wow.
And I was head of the riot team. I was training in the riot teams. I trained hand to hand on most of the riot teams down there in Texas, and I was working death row. And golly, I hated it. And yeah, well, and it was just soulless. I mean, these guys. I mean, they have no. I mean, they're on death row. I mean, they're done. And so they just. You want to look into somebody's empty soul. That's the place. And and I had to escort them, to the chambers a couple of times, and that was no fun. And so yeah, I was sick of it. And once I decided I was going to quit, I mean, that was. That was kind of gutsy in itself. I mean, I had $40 to my name, I think, and 2 weeks until rent was due, and I quit. I was like, "Screw this!" I quit, and I man, I just started hustling. I just started flipping cars like crazy, man. I was calling guys. This is, I was so broke. I didn't even have a cell phone or anything back then. I remember my first deal. I called a guy in Minnesota that I knew. He had come down and bought some rust-free parts from my buddy at Alan Brown at the wrecking yard, and he gave us his card and said, "Hey, if you find any rust-free classic cars, I'm looking for them." And I said, "Okay." So I found a '69 Roadrunner, 444 speed car. And I told the guy, I said, "How much do you want for this car?" And he goes, "I don't know. And I said, "I got a buyer for it." I says, "Can I borrow your phone and make a long distance call?" That's how broke I was, right? And he was like, yeah, come on in. So I called a guy up in French Lake, Minnesota. It was a big wrecking yard up there called French Lake Auto Parts. And I called him up and I said, "Steve," his name was Steve Nolan. I called Steve. I said, "Hey, man, I heard you was looking for the '69 Roadrunner." He goes, Yep. I've been looking for one." So I told him about it. I said, "Oh, it's pretty rust free. It's got a dent about the size of my palm here, scratches here, there." Explain the car. He goes, "Well, how much?" And I told the guy, I said, "How much you want for it?" He goes, I think he said $1,800. And I said, this is in the '90s, this is different numbers back then. But I said, 1,800. He says, "Yeah." I said, "He wants $3,000. And then he says, "I'll take it." And I said, "All right, wire me the money." And so I gave him my bank account number to wire me the money. And then I sat at the bank the next day, just waiting for the money to show up. But hey, think about that. I mean, that was my first. I made $1,200, which was actually more than I made working at the prison. My take home at the prison was $1,100 when I quit. And so I made $1,200 that very first car. And then he paid me to ship it up there because I went and got a truck and a trailer and I shipped it up there and he paid me to bring it. And, anyway, long story short, that's how I started.
So I'm sure coming from the prison system to that and making $1,200 essentially in the blink of an eye was the pretty strong motivating factor to never go back to the prison system and start your life of entrepreneurship.
Oh my goodness. And did I start? I mean, I was off to the right, but it was a pendulum that swung the complete opposite way. Honestly, if I'm completely honest, it almost cost me my marriage because I went the complete opposite way. I was like, I was used to working 12-hour days at the prison. I mean, I was like, heck, I was all over the state of Texas buying cars, and I was gone all the time. I mean, when in 2 years, I had accumulated 10 acres of classic cars, and we went from shipping them out. Remember, I was telling you I shipped that first car with a little truck and a trailer. We went from that to shipping out 3 18-wheeler loads a month.
Wow.
Out of the 10 acres. And I was shipping them Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, all over the world. So yeah, I mean, it went nuts. But again, the pendulum had swung a little too far the other way, and I needed to kind of autocorrect that.
When you go, I was just going to say, when you go from working long hours doing something you hate, moving to something that you really enjoy and are finding immediate success with, obviously you're going to be doing that all of the time.
All the time. I mean, there wasn't a wrecking yard in Texas that didn't know my name. I mean, I was going in there, and honestly, by the time I was done, when I made after that, by the time I was 20, so I quit at 24, made my first million at 26, but I was going into wrecking yards and I'd say, "Hey, I take every truck bed you got, long bed, short bed, rust free, dent free. I'll buy them all at this price. Every truck door, this, dent free, rust free, this model year Ford, this model year Chevy, this model year Dodge, I'll buy them all." And so when I'd get there, they had them all disassembled and already set off to the side. That was the Ron Douglas pile, and so I'd go over there and I'd have 18-wheelers just picking this stuff up and shipping it up to Minnesota.
Wow. So you went from flipping one car to building like a serious business. How did you make that leap? How did you learn the business? Is this just trial and error, or You still had your mentor? Yeah.
Honestly, pure greed. Once I realized I could make my own money and didn't need somebody, it was all about owning the world. I mean, you're 20, you're 24, I mean, you're gonna, I just thought I'm gonna own everything. And so I wanted to own it all. And so I was looking at inefficiencies, because I met other guys that were shipping classic cars up. I wasn't the only one. So there was other guys that were shipping classic cars out of Texas and up to the Rust Belt states, New York, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa. And I noticed something, they were shipping 2 cars at a time. And I'm like, screw this. And we were coming back empty. And so instead of shipping classic cars, I got to shipping trucks, because trucks were just as desirable. And then I was flipping beds upside down on the back of the trucks and filling them full of doors. And so, and then I was finding rusted out trucks in Minnesota and bringing them back. And I was parting them out because, they still ran good. They were just rusted out. So I was taking the motors, transmissions, all that stuff and selling them to the wrecking yards in Texas. So then I was double dipping, what they called me. They called me the double dipper, because I was constantly, like, most of these guys were returning empty. And most of these guys were taking 2 cars or 3 cars at a time. And I was like, I mean, I looked like a gypsy caravan that first time I went up there, because I had the trucks. And then I had the beds on the back of the trucks. I C-clamped them down, and I stuffed the beds, the back of the trucks full of doors. And then I lined underneath of the trucks. I lined them with bumpers and doors and strapped them all down.
Oh, wow.
And then I noticed there was room. If I got short bed trucks, there was enough room in between 2 trucks, and I would stand 2 beds up rail to rail and stack them right in the middle. And I mean, I was cramming it. Oh yeah. I made every trip worth it.
So,
yeah.
So you had that business for how long?
I had it until I was 26. Yeah. 26, 27. And then I sold it to a buddy of mine. Because my wife was burned out with the business. She was burned out with Texas. It was hot down there. And so she wanted to move, and we decided to move to Utah. And so I just walked down, and I mean, when you own the world, you do what you want, right? And so I just walked down and walked in there and said, "Hey, bud, you like this business, don't you?" He goes, "Yeah, I love it." I was like, "Fine, I'm gonna sell it to you, own or carry it." Nice. And he's like, "You're kidding." And I was like, "No, I'll own or carry it. You can have it." Of course, he went out of business like a year later. I mean, he ran it in the ground, but I didn't know any better at the time. I was just young and, full of energy. So I was just like, I'm going to go up to Utah and do a different business, do something else. And so that was my life lesson right there, because I was broke by 28.
So did you have another business concept or idea in mind when you moved out to Utah, or was there a driving something
but I was still
Utah?
spending money like I was making money, and so bought the house, bought the cars, fit right into the neighborhood, but didn't have a doggone, nothing coming in. And
so what'd you end up doing there?
Another business by mistake, actually. It was my neighbor called and said, "Hey, you're from Texas. You know anything about raccoons?" I was like, "What?" I was like, I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I got a raccoon stuck in my chimney." I was like, "Okay." I said, "I'll come over and help you." So I went over and helped him get this raccoon out. And by then there was probably 2 or 3 neighbors had gathered up, and they were all like, "Yeah, we got raccoons, and I got squirrels, and I got problems." And so I started researching it, and I found out that it was a viable business doing wildlife control. Mm-hmm. And so I started a company, and then I found a franchise, and it was the first time I had ever done a franchise. And it was a franchise called Critter Control. Okay. And they were just starting up at the time. They didn't have very many offices at the time. And man, fast forward 5 years later, it was another one of those. I just went gung ho on it. I ended up having a Critter Control Salt Lake, Critter Control Denver, Critter Control Boulder, Critter Control Colorado Springs, Critter Control Fort Worth, and Dallas.
Wow.
Yeah. And I ended up selling all those, later, down the road. But yeah, that was the first time I had ever been involved with a franchise. And but it was, like I said, it was just a small little mom and pop type franchise, but they had me on the board, and as they were growing, and we really took it to the next level. I believe, or yeah, we sold it to Orkin. So Orkin owns the company now.
Wow.
But yeah, that was a fun ride. I mean, I made a lot of money doing that. A lot of money. I mean, I made more money with squirrels I probably did than I did with Mustangs.
Would you learn from that business that you took on with you as a lesson learned?
And just in general from franchising, I think that's an interesting
Yeah,
topic
yeah,
that we
that was
haven't-
interesting.
Yeah.
That was interesting. I think the biggest thing I learned about franchising on that is just be careful and watch that you're not working for them. You know what I mean? Like for instance, Quiznos at the time, I remember there was problems with Quiznos, and you had to buy all your meats and all your stuff from Quiznos,
Right.
and they were jacking the prices up and selling, and you could only buy their stuff, which I understand because they were doing quality control, but at the same time, it's kind of like double-handed. They're making money on both ends. Now they're making money off of your supplies, and they were making money off of your franchise fees. And so, yeah, that was like a little bit of double dip in there. So you got to be careful with that stuff. But luckily, Critter Control wasn't like that. They were pretty cool. And like I said, they were young and they were growing fast. And I mean, when I sold, I mean, I'm pretty sure they had at least one office in every state, if not multiples. So, yeah, it had grown quite a bit when I left. But the one thing I learned the most about that was team building, I would say.
Okay.
Employees, hiring, firing, getting the right employees. Because when I had the car business, I didn't focus on that. But when I had that business, it was all about employees and the team, and having them go out, because I couldn't go out to every job and watch every job. So
Right.
it was all about that. And I think my biggest takeaway from that, and I still use this to this day, when people tell me they have a bad team, or their employees are not living up to expectations or something like that, first thing I ask them is, name one of the guys, Jeff. Say, okay, one of your employees, his name is Jeff. What's his wife's name? I don't know. How many kids does he have? I don't know. And and that, it's kind of an eye opener for people. And then I tell them, I say, the fastest way to help yourself is to help somebody else. And so what I did is I started focusing on my team and what they wanted. What do you want out of life? What are your goals? How much do you want in savings? Do you want a new truck? Do you saving, down payment for a new house, and blah, blah, blah. And every month I would meet with these guys and I'd say, okay, where are we at with your goals? And I'd help them achieve these goals that they had. And I noticed that we went from that first year I did that, I was doing about 300,000 a year. And we went to just over $1 million that first year. And the only thing I changed was that.
Wow.
Did you find that with franchising, it required a better understanding of regional differences or nuance, or were you able to apply like the same business and team and staffing model across each location?
Well, that business was unique because obviously it was wildlife. So here in Colorado, squirrels were the main thing, but maybe in Florida it's alligators or whatever, So I mean, it was a large array of different animals. But I think the thing I learned the most about critter control was helping. I felt like, because I was on the board and I was helping with a lot of the growth, that it was about systems and getting systems in place.
Sure.
It didn't matter the product, because the customer still needed the product, whether it was alligators, raccoons, foxes, it didn't matter. What matters is the system. We had a system in place, accountability for the employees, and making sure we solved the problem in a timely manner, and then was able to do repairs and prevent it from happening again. I mean, if you got a hole in your roof and we catch the squirrels and we leave and go, have your repair guy fix the hole, they'd be calling us again in a year. So we'd always patch the hole. And then it turned into, this was actually a genius move. And it was another one of those that I did by accident. I was trying to go on vacation, and this guy called me, and he was determined to have me out before I went on vacation. And he had squirrels in the attic. The process was to catch the squirrels, patch the hole, right? But that meant I had to check the traps every day. And I'm like, dude, I'm getting ready to leave on vacation. So I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put a one-way door. I'm going to build a one-way door so the squirrels can come out, but they can't go back in. And that became such a brilliant move. And because think about it. I mean, when you've got 50 jobs and you're checking traps every day, you're stopping at 50 houses and checking the traps every day. Well, then we went to one-way doors, and it was almost mandatory for them to pay for the repairs at that point. It's like, look, we'll put a one-way door, squirrels can come out, but they can't go back in. And then once they're done, we'll come back, remove the one-way door, and we'll patch the hole. And they're like, oh yeah. Well, what it also made them do was anywhere else on their roof that squirrels could possibly get in, they had to pay for those repairs before we put the one-way door on. Because I said, they come out, they're just going to go around and go in another hole, so you got to get all these holes fixed first, or all these little gaps, construction gaps fixed. So we went from an average service call of like $500 to an average service call of $1,200.
Wow.
And that's the only thing we changed. And we didn't have to go every day because we put a one-way door. So we weren't having squirrels and traps. And so, and then the funds went through the roof at that point,
You're like a general contractor at the same time.
At that same time. Exactly. Yeah. And so, but everybody's got like roof vents on, attic vents on your roof. Well, the squirrels would like to crawl up underneath there. So we'd put a guard on those, but it was about $100 for a stainless steel guard, and some of these people had, 13 roof vents, so, I mean, they start adding up, but you got to put guards on every one of them before you can put the one-way door. And so it almost made them buy all the repairs before we could even do the job. And so that was just money.
So,
yeah, we made so much money doing it that way.
What was your talk about what you learned from that business and where you headed from there?
Okay, so then after that, like I said, the biggest thing I learned from there was helping my employees. If I helped my employees get what they wanted, they would help me get what I wanted. That was my biggest takeaway from that. And then I got tired of building businesses from scratch, because you got to think about it. I built the car business, and then every one of the franchises that I named, I started from scratch. Nobody was there. So I started all those from scratch. So I was burned out on that. And I said, what is it that I'm good at? And so I had to sit down and focus on what I was good at. And then I started looking for companies that sucked at what I was good at. And then I was just buying them, doing only what I was good at, taking them to the next level, so maybe taking them from $100,000 to $1 million, and then selling them, with the growth curve, and saying, look, they got a strong growth curve, blah, blah, blah. And so I was able to 5X, some of these sales. And then I noticed there was some sweet money in that, because there's a lot of businesses out there that are, just like cars. I mean, there's a story behind every business, right? I mean, there's a story behind every classic car and the reason it's sitting in a field. Uncle Jed died, we got a divorce, whatever, right? Same thing with businesses. The business sucks because, my wife passed away, or we got a divorce and I'm not focused on the business anymore, and, whatever. So there's always a story, right? And so I started buying up these businesses like I was buying cars, and I started looking at them like cars. And it's like, this car is almost done. It just needs the interior put back in it, and then that, and so it's just bigger numbers, but it was the same as cars. It was like, look, I could buy this, let's just say like a landscaping business. I can buy this landscaping business, and he sucks because one, he's driving around a bunch of old Ford Rangers that look like crap, and they're not labeled or logoed, so it looks like Uncle Jed's business, right? And then on top of that, he doesn't have systems in place, so he's always yelling at the employees, and the employees don't know what he wants, and blah, blah, I could see all the problems, right? And it's like, well, but he's got a ton of clients, so let's take advantage of this. So I'd buy the business, buy a fleet of trucks, because it was easy to buy. You can just go down and sign for a fleet of trucks. I mean, that's no problem. And once I learned critter control and how to do all that, I knew how to do that. So I could go down and buy a fleet of trucks. Did you know? Most people don't know this, but you could buy a plain Jane XL F-150. Now, this is probably 10, 15 years ago now, but you can buy it for 10 grand, brand new, off the showroom floor, brand new. And so, yeah. When you have a fleet account, that's how cheap they are. And so I was buying, $10,000 truck, and I put 100,000 miles on it and sell it for $10,000. And so trucks didn't cost me anything, and and I knew that, but most of the business owners don't know that. And so that was a hack that I was using. So I was always looking for companies that needed a fleet upgrades. That was one of the things I was trying to do. And so but anyway, going back to the story there. So I just focused on that, and I just focused on taking $100,000 business, turning it into $1 million business, and then selling it, or taking a $500,000 business and turning it into 1.2 or $1.5 million business, and then selling it. Because once I got the systems in place and I got all the employees in place, man, I got bored quick. I just got bored. My wife, it used to drive my wife nuts, because she's like, finally, these companies are really making some money, and you don't need to be there, and you get bored, and now you want to sell it.
You're a flipper.
Yeah, I was a flipper.
Yeah.
I like the challenge. I like getting in there and fixing it. And so that's what I did. I did that for a long time. And I did that with every business. I mean, I did it with, I didn't do it just with service-based businesses. I mean, I had a solar company at one time. I did e-commerce websites. I've done it with those. Because once you see it with one business, you can see it on any business. You know what I mean? You can say, oh, well, their problem is this and their problem is that, and I bought an e-commerce website one time. The guy had passed away, and his wife didn't know anything about the business. And she's like, I don't know nothing about this. And she goes, I don't want it. She goes, would you buy it? And I was like, oh, sure. And then that business, I ended up turning into like 3 exits, because I didn't realize it when I bought it, but this guy was a freaking genius. He was actually creating products and having them manufactured in China to his specifications.
Right.
And I'm not talking about just like any old product. Like he was doing these off-grid LED lighting systems for solar, and I was like, well, dang, that's a product all in and of itself, I mean, that has nothing to do with the solar part of it. So I branched off the solar, and then I branched off the lighting, and I branched off, you know what I mean? And so I broke it all up and built each company into more than 6 figures, and then sold them off. Boom, boom, boom.
Amazing.
So it sounds like you've done a great job of identifying opportunities that align with your strengths when you can come in. How do you find all of these businesses and opportunities? How do you source them?
Back in the day, I guess this will show my age, but a lot of times, at least back then, it was, I called a landscaper, and I see him, he shows up, or I call a garage. I bought this garage door company one time, and he showed up in a Ford Ranger with a wooden flatbed that he made himself. Oh my gosh. And he was out of Boulder, Colorado. I'm like, how can you be driving this rusty piece of junk in Boulder, Colorado? And I just, I started asking about his business, and how, what about his business? And I said, well, why aren't you bigger? And I can't stand employees. Oh, I love when they say that. It's because they don't know how to manage employees, and they don't know how to do it right. It's like, oh, okay. I said, oh yeah, employee, that's terrible. Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah, I was like, you want to sell? And it just put the bug in their ear, and you almost know once you put that bug in their ear, and they can't stop thinking about it. They're like, oh, I could sell this business. This guy wants to buy my business. And then that's all they could think about is what they would do with the money if they sold it. And it never takes them long. I mean, it's been as short as 24 hours, and it's been as long as, I don't know, 6 months. Somebody's called me from a conversation and said, hey, you remember you said you wanted to buy that business? Yeah. You still? Yeah.
Ron, what's your best success story? What company have you blew up the largest and was the best exit?
Well, that's a good question, man, because they're all good. Well, a lot of them are good, but there's some of them stand out for different reasons, but sheer numbers, I would have to say it would have to be the merge of, well, I guess there's a couple of them that were just big, but there was one that was a solar company that I had grown. That guy just wanted out for just what he had in inventory, which was just silly because he didn't have much inventory. Oh, another one was a greenhouse. Oh, this one was a good one. So there was a guy that had a greenhouse company, and he wanted to move. Where do you want to move? Alaska or something. And he says, listen, man, he goes, I got what was it? It was something stupid. It was like $7,000 in this bender for bending the metal archways for the framing. And he says, I got that. And he goes, I got another $7,000 in a website, which was ridiculous because the website looked like it was from 1995. And anyway, so he wanted like 15 grand for this business. And this is when I was doing Discovery Channel. So he contacted me because I did this Discovery Channel thing, and he reached out to me and he's like, man, I saw you on there. He goes, I think this business would be perfect for you. And I looked at it and I was like, and it was building greenhouses. And I thought, well, this is perfect because at the time I owned an expo called the Self-Reliance Expo. It was all about preparedness and emergency preparedness and, sustainability and being your own. And so I had a customer base already with that expo. I mean, I had 100,000 attendees coming into the expo every year. And so I was just like, man, I got a built-in customer base already. So I bought the company. I fixed a few things. I mean, I didn't like the design on his greenhouses, so there's a bunch of changes there. But then, man, once we got it dialed in, man, we were shipping those suckers out, and man, that was a money maker. I was shipping those things all over the country, and I mean, Amish were buying them. All the Self-Reliance people were buying them, and then. That's about the time automation started coming in. So these guys were buying them with the solar panel. Then I started to sell because then I had just sold that solar company. And so before I did that, I branched off this greenhouse solar kit that I implemented into the greenhouse company. So then you could basically have a solar panel with grow lights. It had grow lights, a battery system, and a thermostat and fans for the greenhouse, and it was all a kit, and it was a add-on kit to the product. And anyway, we were just killing it with that. Yeah.
Wow.
We ended up selling that to a bigger company that just merged it all into their company.
So Ron, you mentioned the opportunity with the Discovery Channel. How did that come to be? Was that you seeking them out? Did they stumble upon you? How did that come to be, and can give us some detail on the show and what you did?
Yeah, on that. So that one was really interesting. I didn't seek them out. They saw. I had helped a guy that owned a business, and I did some coaching for him, and he was about ready to lose the business, honestly. And I helped him turn it around, and we turned it around in like 30 days. Man, I was like, man, he was up against the wall. I mean, when I say he was getting ready to lose it, I'm talking like, I mean, yeah, they were about ready to bring a moving van over and just empty his company out. And so anyway, I got him turned around. Well, he happened to know a movie or a show producer, and they were at lunch, and they were talking about this project, and and they wanted to go after, what was that show? The Prophet. You ever
Yeah.
heard of The Prophet?
Marcus
With
Lemonis.
Marcus Lemonis. Yeah.
Mhm.
They wanted to kind of create a show that was kind of similar to that and kind of go after that.
Mhm.
And he says, "Oh, you got to reach out to Ron Douglas, talk to Ron Douglas." So the producer called me and we interviewed, and I said, "Yeah, I'd be interested," because it was a bucket list item. I always thought it'd be kind of cool to be on, do a TV thing. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. I was really busy at the time, but I was like, yeah, I'll make time for it. And I'm glad I did it, but I also didn't extend it. So I guess they do these tests where people will push the button if they're really interested in the show, and then when they're not as interested, I don't know what this test is. They talk
Nielsen
about,
ratings.
yeah, something like that. And so they said that every time I came on screen, man, the button it just escalated. And so at the time, I don't know if you know what the show is about, but the show is basically mentors like me, but there's 3 of us in
Okay.
different parts of the country. And they said every time that they went to a different mentor, the button just didn't get pushed, and so it was just not as exciting. And so when it came back to me, it got exciting again. So they asked me if I would extend, do 5 more seasons, and do just
you.
but just me. And I was, oh, man, told them no. I turned it down because the reason why is they wanted 11 episodes per season, and they wanted me to do 3 new projects per episode. And I was like, that's 33 new businesses every season. I was like, no, I can't do that. I said, no, I don't want to do that, and because I'd already got a little bit of a taste of, what they were wanting, and they want stuff that's good for TV, not necessarily good for business, and so I was just like,
So
I just didn't need the headache.
on the profit, Lemonis invests in all the businesses. Are you also doing that too, or are you just coaching?
No, so they were asking me to do the investing, and if I didn't agree, so here's the thing that's interesting. I don't know if I should. Yeah. So if I didn't agree with the business, they would front the capital, and which was fine, but it still makes me look bad when the business is out of business in 6 months. You know what I mean? As like, this guy's a joker and he ain't gonna last, and I told him that, I was like, this guy ain't gonna last. I was like, I'm not gonna coach this guy because he's a dimwit, and I won't tell you who, but anyway, they said, no, we want it. And I was like, all right. So they said, it's great for TV. Just do it. We'll pay for the remodel. I said, okay, fine. I said, you want to pay for it? Then fine, go for it. And I said, I'll coach him. But at the end of the day, you start thinking about it, and you're like, people don't give a crap what the deal was. They're going to watch me on the show, and they're going to go and look up this business, and they're going to find out they're out of business, and that's going to give me a bad name. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, then like I said, 33 new businesses, and that started bouncing around in my head, and I couldn't get over it. I just said, nah, I just can't do this. So
Yeah.
Always interesting hearing about some of those television production dynamics.
yeah, the production, yeah.
That when you're watching, you think,
some of them have done great. I mean, like the flight school. I mean, he's booked out like 3 years in advance now. So I mean, that guy's set. The barbershop, he's doing really well. I was just in Colorado Springs, and he actually expanded to another location. He's done really well. Yeah, so some of them have done great. Some of them not so great. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting and it was fun to do. The problem with it was it wasn't. I like the coaching. I like helping somebody. So, like, say you come to me and say, "Hey, I got a problem," right? Well, after the show, they portrayed me as this investor, and so they didn't come to me with problems. The only problem that everybody had was, I need money for this project. And I was like, oh man. And that was the other reason I kind of got away from it. It's because it didn't portray what I was wanting. I was wanting to do the coaching, but I did not want to be an investor in everybody's business,
Sure.
Makes sense.
So,
Wow, what a cool experience. Yeah.
It's been a
You've had-
wild ride, man. I
you've had a
can't, I
lot.
cannot complain. I cannot complain. It's been a wild ride.
If we had like 8 more hours, I feel like we can just keep this train rolling.
Oh,
But
oh yeah, I got plenty. Yeah, we got plenty of stories.
unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time here. So let's try to wrap it up.
Okay.
Would love some final words from you, just with all of your business investments, your flipping, your exits. If you could boil that down, and I know this isn't going to be easy, to a few tips. I guess it's back to the lessons learned. We're trying, we try to teach people in this show of entrepreneurs of what they should be doing and what they shouldn't, based on other folks' experience. So, any final nuggets of wisdom there?
Yes. You as a listener, you know everything you need to know to become a millionaire. Don't overcomplicate it. Do not think you got to go out and read a book and do everything that the person in the book has done, or go out and learn a whole new set of skills. Trust me, whatever skills you have now, you can make $1 million with. You may have to learn a few additions to it, but whatever skill set you have right now, whether it's baking cupcakes or cutting grass, I mean, seriously, I mean, you can make it's not as much the skill set as it is showing up and building a bigger vision of what you have. There really hasn't been anybody that I haven't been able to take to $1 million in my head anyway, and plan it out when they come to me and say, hey, this is what I do, these are my skill sets. Like, boom, okay, do this. If you do this, this, and this, you can be at $1 million in 12 months, no problem. Boom. And so, yeah, it might not be what you think it is. You know what I mean? You might be a janitor for a school. Okay. And you go, well, how am I supposed to become a millionaire being a janitor for a school? Okay. Well, let's change that. Why don't you be a janitor for all the schools and you own your own janitorial service, or you start your own janitorial service and you start doing Airbnbs, or you know what I mean? You're still using the same skills, but you're doing it in a different way and packaging it in a different way. And so, yeah, it's all about, a lot of people can't see the forest for the trees, because they're just so stuck into what they're doing on a day-to-day. But I would say that was the biggest takeaway, is there really hasn't been anybody out there that I can't come up with a blueprint for $1 million business in 12 months.
So if they want to kind of dig in more and hit that next level, it sounds like your current business would be a good option for them.
Yeah. I mean, if you're interested, listen, I am all about no fluff, man. It is straight to the money for me. It's all about what's the fastest path to cash. Ethically, ethically, of course, but what's the fastest path to cash and how to build this business. And I cut out all the fluff. We trim the fat and we just get serious with it. And so, yeah, if you go to mentoringgiants.com, and you can either just sign up for the newsletter if you're just still sitting on the sidelines, or if you seriously want to stop daydreaming about making $1 million and actually make the $1 million in the next 12 months, just book a call. I talk to everybody. I'm the person that talks to you.
That's awesome.
So,
you're a good dude.
Yeah, book the call. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. With 8 kids, it's
oh my God. We didn't get to that. Holy cow.
Yeah, with 8 kids, it can get a little crazy, but yeah, I talked with everybody. And so if you book a call, I'm the one you talk to, and I guarantee you by the time we're done with that call, if you already have a business, we'll get you on the right track. If you feel like you're stuck somewhere, we can get you through that. If you don't have a business but you want one, we can blueprint that and have a solid plan.
That's awesome. That's a great offer. Well, best of luck in the new venture and the many more ventures I'm sure to come.
Thanks.
Appreciate you coming on the pod today. It was a pleasure getting to know you, and we're just really impressed with what you've done.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, I got a question for you guys.
Sure.
All
You
right.
ready for this? All right. Let me throw a question at you. What was your biggest takeaway from this interview?
I thought your points on team
Yeah.
were very valid. And I think you, as a business owner, you can get so focused in on what needs to be done for the business that it can happen where you overlook that, like, you're working with other humans, working with other people, and they are your assets. They are, like, you need to develop these deep connections and relationships for it to be mutually beneficial as a business owner, for you to move the business forward, but for them to be sure that they're accomplishing and achieving their own goals, because that will be the factors that incentivize and motivate. So I think that for me is always just a good reminder of that aspect, and very valid point.
I think identifying business opportunities, with your own business or with others that you want to go out and buy, by looking at what they're doing right, and more importantly, what they're doing wrong, and then matching that with your own skill set to see if you could actually make a difference with that company. I think that's a area that people don't really focus on, especially in their own businesses. They're too into the weeds. They're only seeing the trees. They're just every day waking up, kind of just cranking through their day, and that's it. They're not looking at what could be improved.
And just play to your strengths. I mean, every person is different and brings something unique and valuable to the table. So why try and fit a square peg through a round hole? Like, just
You know where I learned that the most from? Honestly, I got to give credit to the prison system, is because we all had to play to our strengths when we were in a riot. I mean, you didn't send the smallest guy in first, you know what I mean? You had to send the big center guy, right? And so, but everybody had a different strength. Some guys were fast and light on their feet. Some guys were just built like a brick wall, and some guys, and so you had to put everybody in the team in the right place to get through that incident. But that's where I learned that was play to your strengths and focus on your strengths.
Yeah, I like it. Simple.
For sure.
Nice.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Ron. This
Ron.
was wonderful. Thanks for coming on the show.
You bet. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. Take care.
Everybody got a dream. Let me show you all love. From an idea, working it into a startup. This the show that you need. What more could you ask for? Never know who become the CEO next door. Tune in, every episode insightful. The type of vibe you will want to subscribe to. Let's go. Hey.